And we're live. Amazing. Well, hello, Trisha, and
Hello
welcome.
again.
I know, hello again. It's becoming a regular thing now, isn't it?
It is. We're going to always do this catch ups. It's lovely.
It is. It's lots of fun. We do have a good time. But yes, we are here. We are live for our weekly Q&A session here on our careers page, which is very exciting. We get a lot of joy out of doing this for students and alumni. So
Absolutely.
yes, well, thank you very much for being here, Trisha. And today's topic is all about interviews and acing your next job interview, or whether it's in person or online, pretty much online at the moment. But yes, we are hoping to give out as many tips and ideas as we can to help everyone watching ace their interview.
Absolutely. So, talking
Fantastic.
about the best way to prepare, you know, specifically, like you said, for online, it's a little bit tricky, but you're kind of looking at making sure that you've got a quiet place, that your internet connection's working fine, that your video connection's working fine, and that you have prepared everything beforehand in terms of questions. So I think that's something to keep in mind in terms of the preparation. The job ad and your selection criteria that you've been asked are probably going to be the questions that you're going to get asked in the interview. So that's the best way to actually prepare, other than researching the organisation and researching the position, is to have a look at that job ad, have a look at the selection criteria, and take those as examples of the questions that you might get asked, and have detailed examples using the STAR method, which we can hopefully link maybe below.
Yes, and we'll
And be able to go over. Yep, detailed examples for every single question.
Absolutely. Oh, Trisha, that is such a great thing to hear about. And you actually answered my very first question. That was a very good answer. I wanted to say to anyone who's actually watching this at the moment or after this as well, please feel free to leave any questions that you've got about job interviews below, or anything that you would like answered from Trisha. She will definitely be able to help you out, and we'll get back to you very, very soon. But Trisha, I was going to get you because I just want people to know who you are and what you do. Would you mind just telling us a little bit about who you are in the team and what you do? And then I have another question for you to answer as well.
And I get a little bit excited, and I can talk underwater about this. I've been in this role for a very long time. Trisha Harris, career education consultant with the careers unit, and jumping right in there with your tips before I even introduce myself.
Hey, that's okay. It just shows how excited you are to actually be sharing these tips and doing what you do. So I think it's a great thing. You've already given us some really good tips, so thank you, Trisha. And my name is Corinne. I'm a student engagement coordinator here in the Office of Employability and Graduate Success. So with that, Trisha, we've already answered one of my first questions that I was going to ask you, so thank you so much. But we put it out there to students, and it's a good thing, trust me. We put it out there to students to send us in questions that they have about job interviews, and, you know, things that sort of make them nervous and anxious about job interviews, because there was quite a few who found them a very nerve-wracking time. So we are going to try and answer those questions today to help alleviate those feelings. But one of the first questions that we did have, which you actually probably did already answer, but we'll do it just one more time in case anyone's jumped in, is the best way to prepare for an interview. Maybe your top 3 tips. And you sort of, answered already, but let's do it one more time because we have a few new viewers at the moment.
No worries at all. So top 3 would be the research. So researching the organisation and the position. 2, anticipate the questions. So having a look at that job ad and the selection criteria to kind of have an idea about the questions they're probably going to ask. And 3 is to practice, and practice them more.
Yes, I agree. I remember before when I was doing, job interviews and everything like that, I would always go in front of the mirror and stand there with my ideal answers and practice them like that. So maybe that's a way that those watching can do that too.
Yep, we've also got something that we can also link down below is an interview simulator, so you can actually practice at home and see how you respond to the questions. And the questions can be either pre-built or you can type in your own questions based on the job ad that you've applied to, so that way you can practice beforehand.
Yes, fantastic. That's a great idea. I will definitely link those below once we finish this live so everyone can have a look at those, because they are very, very valuable tools for us to have access to during interview times. But Trish, one of the questions that kept popping up in our Instagram poll when we were asking students for questions was about feeling anxious and nervous before an interview, which is very understandable. It's a bit of a random situation to find yourself in sometimes. What sort of tips would you give to students who are feeling a little bit nervous, or in that sort of boat of feeling about interviews, and how would you help them overcome it? It's a big question.
Yeah, it is. But and I've been for a lot of interviews in the past, and I've also been on the panel for a lot of interviews. So my personal tip is the preparation. It's key. If you have practiced so much that you know every time they mention the word communication or teamwork skills, or tell me a little bit about yourself. If you have practiced all of your answers and you know them off the top of your head, and you should anyway, because it's about you, so you can't really fail in that response, so as long as you know that you can do the job, you go in confident. So that's probably the main things: confidence and practice. And to get that confidence is to practice.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I used to find that I'd have to go through and highlight key points in a job ad or a job description, and that would really help me to sort of draw what the questions might be in an interview, or looking at the essential criteria, I guess. So that might be a tip that helps students watching this too, if that's something that you might want to do to prepare as well.
Absolutely.
Very good tip. I love these tips. They're so useful. We need a notepad and pen to write them all down. Now, Trisha, another question that we did get asked was actually about when you are asked a question in an interview, what are your weaknesses? Because that is a question that does come up sometimes from employers. How would you sort of tell students to answer this question, or what tips would you have for students when answering this question in a job interview?
Yeah, absolutely. It is one that people struggle with, as well as the strengths and weaknesses people struggle with. So definitely be thinking about these. Don't say you don't have a weakness, because it's not true, and no employer wants to hear that. Don't say you enjoy work too much, so then you take on everybody else's work and you just don't know when to go home. Something that everyone probably chooses as their excuse, or kind of a way to make themselves look better. Pick something that you actually have been told about by previous supervisor or manager, but something that you have been able to overcome. So let's say that you talked too much at the cash desk, and so you needed to be quicker. So what process did you go to fix that? So you've taken on constructive criticism from your boss, and you've put it into interaction. So I've had a student that has previously said to me they felt their weakness was their communication skills. And how they went about that is they went and found local courses, they did volunteering, they practiced their English skills to be able to gain confidence in that area. They hadn't been told that was a weakness, but they felt it was, so they did something about it. So for me, it's actually public speaking, go figure. And my team leader or manager wouldn't have a bar of that and kept putting me in those situations. And now I do this on an ongoing basis, but it's not something that come easily to me. So it's about the process that you take to fix something. And you want to give an example that had a positive result. You don't want to give an example about how you're late all the time, but you haven't fixed that, or you talk too much, like this.
No, I think that's a really good. No, you do not talk too much, by the way. That's actually something that I've been told a lot by, but you definitely don't have that trouble. You're doing really well. I think those are such great tips, and you're right. Like having a solid example, but showing that you've actually sort of solved the weakness or sort of overcome it in a way, I think is a really good way to sort of show that you're a problem solver as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really great. Actually, on that note, we've had a question come in from Johnny, who's asking us a question about questions that you might not be prepared for when answering. And he asked us, what is the best way to deal with a question that you may have not prepared for? For instance, a behavioural scenario that you've never experienced before, or a technical question you do not know. Do you have any thoughts about that at all, Trisha, and how you would go about answering that?
Yeah, absolutely. And a great question. Thank you. Okay, so first of all, take time. So it's okay to take a few seconds to think about what your example is going to be. It's also okay for you to ask to have them clarify it. So if you didn't really understand, you can ask them to repeat it. You can say a response, and if they're sitting there looking blank, it's okay for you to say, is that what you meant? Is that what you were asking for with that? Or if it's a two-part question, you may only get half of it. It's also okay for you to say, there was a second part. Would you mind repeating the second half of that question? Or to say, What a great question. I'm just trying to work out. I've got a few different examples that would be great, and I'm just trying to work out which one is the best. It gives you time to think while you're kind of, blabbing on, as I do, and it gives you that second to go, okay, well, what is the best way to answer this question? So give yourself time, and it's okay to kind of to clarify like that. Let's say you don't know the answer whatsoever. So let's say it's a computer program. I would give them what you do know. So you want to give an example based on, okay, well, as much as I haven't used that particular database, this is the database that I have used, and this is the examples that I have, and the experience that I have with it. So that way you're not telling them that you can't do it. You're telling them that you have the capacity to learn that because you've used something similar. And I feel like I missed one part of that question as well.
Yeah, so the example was, like, for instance, a behavioural scenario that you've never experienced before,
Yep.
or a technical question that you don't know, which I do think you touched on for your response.
The behavioural ones, something that we are working on today in our workshop. One of the questions is, tell me about a time where you've dealt with a difficult customer or client or staff member and how you handled that. Most people who have worked in retail or hospitality or something like that have worked with a difficult customer or have an example for that. In saying that, there's been some students that I've worked with that haven't had an example for that and have worried, I'm going to fail them because I actually haven't had an issue in my work life, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But what would be the process that you would go through if you did? So if you are at work and it is a customer service role and you had somebody come in and they made a complaint or they were really angry, how would you handle that situation? Because that's what they're interested in, that and have the skills and abilities to be able to solve that problem.
Absolutely, and that's such a true thing too. And one thing you did mention to send to Trisha was actually our interviews, our workshops on mock interviews that are coming up this week. And you mentioned there's one today, which is fantastic, at 2:00, I believe. Yes. So would you mind telling just those who are currently watching at the moment how they can actually get involved in that workshop if they want to, what it's all about, and where they can sign up?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can register through Career Hub under events. We have 2 sessions this week. So we've got one today at 2:00 and then Friday at 2:00. So they are different questions. So today we are focusing on 3 specific questions that you will practice. And then on Friday, it'll be 3 different questions. You can absolutely attend both, or one or the other is fine. But they are mock interviews. So it is to actually utilize that time to learn about commonly asked questions, how to respond to them, the process of using that STAR method that I mentioned earlier, and practicing it, which is something that's quite tricky, and a lot of people don't have the opportunity to. So and we'll also touch on things like the interview simulator in there as well. So there's other tools that you can take away after the workshop to continue practicing.
Oh, fantastic. I feel like this is one of those things that we really encourage students to get involved in. They're free workshops for you to sign up on. They're all done online, and Trisha and Aman as well, our other careers education consultant, will be running them. So you've got an awesome support there for you as well. You can ask as many questions as you want.
Absolutely.
Yay, so good. Now, another really good question we got, Trisha, that came in from our Instagram poll that we ran was actually about what questions you should ask at the end of an interview, because I know at the end of interviews, employers like to ask, do you have any questions for us? And it can sometimes be a bit awkward if you don't actually have any questions for them. So what would you say to students who sort of want to know what they should actually be asking in this time?
Yeah. I would actually go in with a list of 8, and I'll get to ideas on those in a second. But as the interview goer, I would pretty much guarantee that the employer, as they're interviewing, will mention parts of the job. So you may find yourself actually ticking off some of the questions that you've kind of written down that you're more curious to find out about. You may only have 2 out of the 8 left, and it's okay to say to them, actually, I had a page full of questions, but you've answered them all for me. The 2 final questions that I've got are, and it could be, when are you likely to know the decision of these interviews? Is there someone I can contact in a week or 2 to find out about the decision? So 2 separate questions there. It could be, only ask questions that aren't in the job ad or the position description or aren't on the website. So you obviously want to have done your research, and if there's any gaps, if it's about how many people are in the team, when would the start date be, what are the working hours, so it's really about things that you're interested in knowing. So it shows that you've got a passion for that particular role. And as I said, go in with that list and then mark them off as they go. But try not to ask anything that has been written clearly in the job ad, because it's going to show that you weren't paying attention.
Yes, very, very good point. And I do think, like you said, it does show when you have those questions that you are really keen and really interested in the job application, in the job itself. I think it's a good sign to employers that, yes, we're onto a good thing here.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, thank you, Trisha. Really awesome question. And thank you also, Johnny, for sending in the question that we answered prior. And if anyone has any other questions they would like answered, please do add them into the comment section and we will answer them as we go. But we do have another question here, and it's about online interviews, which have now become our reality over the last few months. And Trisha, I would love to know what your top tips are for preparing for online interviews, and maybe a little bit how they do differ from face-to-face interviews as well.
Yeah, so I kind of touched on this at the start when I was kind of really eager. Make sure that you've got a quiet space that's well lit, your internet's working, your video's working, all that kind of stuff. Now, we've been doing this work from home for a really long time now, and there's still been times where my Zoom hasn't worked and either my camera hasn't worked or my microphone hasn't worked. You want to make sure that there's no issues there, so you give yourself time and prepare, and know that you kind of have everything set up, and ready to go. Make sure that you still worry about your appearance, because they can still see you, and there's some people that might wear like a dressy top or whatnot up top and pajama pants because they think they won't notice. But let's say you do have a child knock on the door or whatever it may be and you get up, they're going to see that. So try and think of your whole outfit, your whole space. And if you do have kids at home, to try and have someone to look after them. I don't know if you just heard the banging on the door earlier with me. I've got my two younger twins home sick today. So as they're banging on the door, I'm here going, oh gosh, this is a great example of making sure that somebody's looking after them, because obviously an interview is very important. And you want to make sure that they know that you're taking it seriously, and that they've got all of your attention. The other thing I would do is just be aware of your body language, and if you're fidgeting too much. The good thing about the interview simulator is it also shows you how much you say things a lot, whether it's so for me in this interview, I think I said absolutely, if you go back and count, about maybe 5 or 6 times, and it's things like that when you actually practice where you go, wow, I didn't realize how much I say that. So it's being able to kind of practice that at home is a really good thing, because it's going to be very similar in this particular environment. But the plus side is you don't have to travel, you don't have to worry about parking, so it is quite convenient in a lot of ways. So try not to be too put off. I actually find it easier than in face to face, where you could be sitting with a panel on a massive table and they're at one end and you're up another end, and it's very intimidating. So
very much. Yes, I do agree. I think it's nice to sort of be in your own space as well. You feel a little bit more comfortable knowing your surroundings, and you know exactly where to go at exactly what time. You're not going to get lost. So that's what I think the good thing is as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic. Oh, such fantastic tips, Trisha, and very important things to think about. As you're saying all those things, I'm like, oh, yes, they're so important. Like, you wouldn't even have thought about that until now. So thank you very much for those fantastic tips. I really appreciate it. We all do. Now, the last thank you. The last question I have for you, Trisha, is about things that you've actually already touched on, but it's about the services and the different workshops that we have got to sort of help students with their interviews, and where they can go for extra support. If they have good interviews coming up, they need a little bit of extra support from our team. Where can they go, and what services and resources can we help them with?
Yep. So we do run the workshops, as you've already mentioned, regularly. So we usually run 2 to 3 a week, and tends to be on different themes, or at least the main areas that kind of students are wanting help with, whether it's resumes or interviews or whatnot. So definitely take those up. I find them quite useful because that whole hour is focused on that particular topic, so you get a lot of detailed information and time to practice. You can contact us by asking a question on Career Hub. There's a tab there. So we can get back to you that way. We also have what's called World of Work, which is Monday, Wednesday and Friday from 12 o'clock for an hour. You can also register on Career Hub under events for that as well. And basically that is just a drop-in session. You can come and ask us any career-related questions that you have. We wanted to make sure that during this time where there has been a huge amount of need, and it's really great for us to be able to help people so much at the moment, we wanted to make sure we were there as much as possible. At the moment, there is only me and Aman, and that's 1.5 of us because I'm only part-time. So we are trying our best to be able to do group things more than anything, to be able to help people all at once. So their way of getting in contact with us immediately. We do have consults, but sometimes they can take up to about 3 weeks wait. So the quickest ways would be ask a question on Career Hub or jump into that World of Work session for sure.
Absolutely. There's something there. And I think another thing too, if students have really burning questions they want answers straight away to, feel free to message us on Facebook or Instagram, Western Sydney U Careers, and we will pass the question on to our careers education consultants too. But Career Hub probably is the best way too, which I will link into the comment section after this chat also. But if there's no more questions from anyone who's watching this live from us, you can obviously leave more questions at the end of this session as well. We will get back to you. But I just wanted to say, Trisha, thank you so much for your awesome question answers today, your awesome tips, and I'm certain that everyone watching has gotten a lot from this session.
No worries at all. Always happy to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. And Trisha, I just noticed we got one last question in. Do we have time to do one more question? Is that okay?
Yes, for sure.
Fantastic. And Johnny, thank you again for submitting a great question. The question is, how should students applying to graduate roles balance their responses to show both their future potential and existing skill set when answering questions? I like it.
I think it depends on the question itself. So if the question is asking you about your communication skills, then ideally you would want to be focusing, because a lot of the internships in graduate employment or programs have a selected amount of characters that you can use. It might be 100, it might be 250. So if you've only got a short amount of time, I would be focusing on responding to the question exactly as asked. So if it's tell me about a time where you have used your written and verbal communication skills, then you need to make sure that you have a detailed example of both of those. So if it's a two-part question, you need to be responding to both parts and making sure you've got an example that encompasses both of them, or that you have two different examples, so it can take up a lot of space. So with a cover letter, you could probably go into more about the reason of why you would like to work for them, why you think you're the best person for the job, and also the skills and qualifications that you have that relates. But when it comes to selection criteria, it may not have a whole heap of room to move. If it's an endless amount, then you could probably put in a couple of lines about, your passion for that particular industry and where you see yourself going. But ideally, it's focused around that job. So even in terms of your career objective, it should be focused on your skills and qualifications, again, that relate to the job at hand. But your objective is that job. So you don't want it to be quite general, like I just want to work in business. Well, what does that mean? Whatever you're responding to, really think back to what the employer wants to know and needs to know, and they need proof that you're the best person for the job. So however that, you're able to show that in your examples is best.
Very, very good points. And thank you so much, Trisha. I hope, Johnny, that you feel like that was a great response, because it definitely was. So thank you, Trisha. And that'll be great.
Let me know if I haven't answered that correctly. And Corinne, can I just say one more thing? Make yourself very familiar with the resources on Career Hub. So we've got like an interview guide. There's most commonly asked interview questions. There's a whole heap of information on Career Hub with resources over everything from resumes to professional associations, selection criteria, cover letters, the works. So that's somewhere you could go after this as well, is just to be able to read through an interview guide to get loads of tips that way as well.
You're right. Yes, there is literally hundreds of articles and resources on Career Hub. So you will not have anything. You'll not have I don't know what I was going to say about that. There's just a lot to read. So get on there. I don't know if my sentence did make sense. Fantastic. But everyone, thank you so much for your fantastic questions. Thank you again, Trisha. And as we said, any other questions at all, please do leave them below. We will definitely get back to you. And we really look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday, when we'll be covering another.
This afternoon in the workshop.
Yes, absolutely. At 2:00 this afternoon, the workshop, which is mock interviews, will be on. So you are very able to register for that. And I'll put the information about that too in the comment section.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Trisha. We cannot wait to see you again very soon, hopefully.
No worries at all. See you next time.
See you guys. Bye.